Thanks, Don, and welcome to everyone to the National Endowment for Democracy, and a special welcome to Congressman Jim McGovern, who is involved in many, many issues that the NED gets involved with. We've spoken together on panels for the Uyghurs and many other issues, and I want to, Congressman, thank you for your, really terrific support. We're old friends of Tom Lantos. We worked with Tom Lantos for many, many years. And it's a great honor to you to be the co-chair of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission. Tom was really a bulwark of support for human rights around the world, and was a great friend of the NED. Jim McGovern, in addition to his work at co-chairing the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, has traveled to Colombia on a number of occasions and is a staunch supporter of human rights defenders in that country. And recently, he has called for better accounting and oversight of U.S. aid to Colombia. This is really a critical issue. I had the opportunity earlier this week of going to the Hill with Holman, and I learned a great deal from that meeting, and he's a very courageous guy, what he's doing. I think his struggle is going to be successful. Many of the people who he's investigated are now in prison. His courage is very, very impressive, because he's dealing with very, very sensitive issues, and I know that he's on the front lines of a very, very difficult struggle. And when you're on the front lines in a difficult struggle like that, you need the support of people like Congressman Jim McGovern, and it's very important, the kind of support that the Congress has given, and Jim McGovern has been in the forefront of that. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce Congressman Jim McGovern. Jim McGovern.
Well, thank you, Carl, and I want to thank the National Endowment for Democracy for all of the incredible work that you do. Supporting freedom around the world is your motto, and what a great mission, what a wonderful mission. And never has there been a time, I think, as crucial in world history to be supporting freedom around the world than right now. So I want to say thank you very much. I want to thank all of you for being here for this briefing. This is an important subject, and you're going to hear from a remarkable man here in a little while, so I'm not going to speak very long, but someone told my staff that this is one of the first time that a member of Congress has attended or participated in one of these panel presentations by an NED research fellow. I hope by the time I leave, you don't decide that this will be the last time you'll ever include a member of Congress in one of these sessions here. But I want to be brief, because Holman's work is why we're all here today. And but I've known Holman Morris for several years. We first met in Colombia, where he worked as a journalist and as the producer of Contravia, kind of the Colombian version of Charlie Rose, but with an edge. And there's a reason why in Colombia any true journalist, let alone an investigative journalist, needs to have an edge. Their lives are always under threat, and they know that any day someone from the paramilitaries, the guerrillas, the drug and criminal gangs, even from the state, might decide to silence them permanently. Journalists are human rights defenders. The right to a free press, the right to freedom of expression, the basic right to ask hard questions and not risk losing your life for it. Journalists are the ones who are constantly under threat and persecution, still to this day in Colombia. In March of 2009, the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, of which I'm the Democratic co-chair, held a hearing on the continuing persecution of human rights defenders in Colombia, and Holman was one of our 4 witnesses. You can read quite an impressive paragraph about Holman on the invitation flyer that we all received from the NED for this luncheon. What it doesn't say is the price Colombian investigative journalists pay for doing their job. They are targeted. They are constantly under surveillance. They are called terrorists, and they are put on terrorist watch lists of many governments, including, I'm sorry to say, the United States government. When Holman was chosen by Harvard University in 2010 to be a Nieman Fellow, you wouldn't believe how many phone calls I and many others had to make to the State Department, the U.S. Embassy in Bogota, and the Department of Homeland Security to get him his visa. And a lot of his problems began with the DAS, the Colombian Intelligence Agency, which deliberately targeted anyone and everyone it felt was asking too many questions about how the government carried out its business, or anyone who worked for human rights, or who wanted to organize a labor union, or was a member of an opposition party or an NGO. To the DAS, they were all terrorists. And they didn't mind turning names of law-abiding citizens over to the paramilitaries with a green light to eliminate them. Now, I've been traveling to Colombia since February of 2001. I've gone all over the place, mainly to places where the U.S. Embassy didn't want me to go. Those are usually the most interesting places to go, by the way. And the DAS was one of those acronyms that you learn about really early. Because of their multiple scandals, year after year, one or another would break. A director would be fired, and the next man or woman would come along and commit even bigger crimes at the DAS. But finally, the scandal got too big to hide, and a new government came to power determined to prosecute some of the key players and formally dismantle the DAS. Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky of Illinois and I have asked our own government whether any U.S. equipment, training, or funding ended up being used for illegal activities by the DAS. We're not satisfied, quite frankly, with the answers we've gotten back so far, but we're still pushing. That's an important piece of information for us to know. The details of what the DAS was doing, how they did it, and who they did it to, that's the subject of Holman's research here at NED. This is important work. It is very, very, very important work, because the corruption and crimes committed by the DAS still need an awful lot of sunshine. And this is work that is still pretty dangerous in Colombia. The legacy of tainted intelligence provided by the DAS continues to this very day. Just the other night, Andrew Hudson, who worked with Human Rights First on protecting human rights defenders like Holman from persecution, was detained at JFK Airport, New York, and interrogated about his association with Colombian NGOs and human rights defenders. And that's the other danger of the DAS. The criminal acts and terror that it initiated keep going on, and they keep going on and on, affecting more victims, threatening more people, and contaminating the integrity of every single individual, agency, and government that it touches. Let me just conclude by saying that it is important, I believe, for our government to be concerned about some of the things that Holman is going to talk about here today, and about the continuing situation for human rights defenders in Colombia. We tend to be very good about highlighting the human rights problems in countries that we consider our adversaries. We're not always so good about highlighting some of the serious human rights violations in countries that are our allies. You know, Colombia is an ally, and we want our relationship to continue to grow. And notwithstanding the free trade agreement, which I thought was a mistake to pass at this particular point, but notwithstanding that, we should not turn away from monitoring the human rights situation in that country. We need to continue to be mindful and watchful, and we need to continue to work with that government and pressure that government to do the right thing when it comes to human rights. I think now more than ever, it's a reflection on us, quite frankly. But it's also an attempt to try to make life for the average Colombian better. So with that, I really welcome the opportunity to be here. I thank Holman for all of his courage, his work, and I look forward to hearing him and the panel here today discuss a very important issue. Thank you.
Hoy día sabemos que el DAS se convirtió en una amenaza regional. Traspasó las fronteras, hizo operaciones ilegales en Ecuador, en Venezuela, en Bélgica, en Bruselas. En Bruselas se llevaron a cabo robos, seguimientos ilegales contra defensores de derechos colombianos y defensores de derechos humanos belgas que trabajaban en el Parlamento Europeo haciendo lobby en el tema de derechos humanos. Hoy hay procesos abiertos en la justicia de Bélgica contra detectives colombianos y también aparece el nombre del expresidente Álvaro Uribe como responsable máximo de los servicios de inteligencia. ¿Por qué el Parlamento Europeo? ¿Por qué Bruselas? Porque allí se define buena parte de la política en derechos humanos de la Unión Europea. Esta es una de las pruebas quizás, bueno, para mí todas son escandalosas. Esta es una orden que se imparte para interceptar ilegalmente y seguir ilegalmente a miembros del Parlamento Europeo. Se encontraron sus fotografías, sus hojas de vida, correos electrónicos interceptados del Parlamento Europeo. Váyanse dando cuenta de la dimensión de esto, de la monstruosidad de esto también, por lo que le hicieron a nosotros los colombianos, pero también cómo esto traspasó las fronteras. No sabemos si esto también se llevó a cabo con miembros de esta manera, con miembros de la Comisión Interamericana de Derechos Humanos en Washington. Sí sabemos, existen las pruebas de interceptación de correos entre miembros de la Comisión Interamericana de Derechos Humanos y defensores en Colombia. Sí sabemos que comisiones y misiones de la Comisión Interamericana en Colombia fueron seguidas, fueron interceptadas. Sí sabemos que hay correos que se cruzaron colombianos con miembros, staffers del Senado norteamericano, que también aparecen en los archivos. Llegamos y nos encontramos con el capítulo de los ciudadanos norteamericanos mencionados en los archivos del DAS. Y entonces empiezan a aparecer las coincidencias. Human Rights Watch, una de las organizaciones más importantes de defensa de derechos humanos en el mundo, con un inmenso y valioso e importante trabajo en Colombia. En el DAS se encontró la siguiente carpeta. Este es el proceso en la Fiscalía de Colombia que alberga toda la documentación sobre Human Rights Watch. Esto era lo que tenía el DAS, parte de lo que tenía el DAS. Observamos aquí todo el movimiento migratorio del director para las Américas de Human Rights Watch, José Miguel Vivanco. En varios documentos se registra seguimientos a José Miguel Vivanco y a colombianos investigadores para Human Rights Watch en Colombia.
I was included.
Lisa Howard. Lisa Howard es la directora del Latin America Working Group, históricamente uno de los grupos más comprometidos con la defensa de derechos humanos y con la democracia en Colombia. Su nombre aparece subrayado y señalado en diferentes correos interceptados entre defensores colombianos y el Latin American Group, subrayados con anotaciones de detectives que dicen seguimiento, seguimiento, seguimiento.
I had the great fortune of being included in the DAS archives. I also believe that that my activities have been watched while I was in Colombia, and a variety of other strange things that have happened to me that may be coming from that source. I have to say it was terrifying for me when I first learned that. But when Samana revealed that anyone who worked for human rights with a lot of spirit and hard work, was included in those files, then I decided that it was, in fact, a badge of honor to be included there. But I should not be, and I should not be followed, because all I've ever done and all that the people I have worked with have ever done is the completely legitimate and above-board work of defending human rights and reporting on human rights topics.
A continuación, una de las pruebas, se encontró en la documentación una lista de ciudadanos extranjeros, y no cualquier ciudadano, no estamos hablando de trabajadores X, de artistas, no estamos hablando de que todas las personas en esta lista, en una de las listas que se ha encontrado, de diferentes nacionalidades, todas defensoras de derechos humanos. En esta lista aparecen varios norteamericanos. Una de ellas, Denise Nicole Fraga, joven estadounidense, para ese momento trabajadora de Ford, con un trabajo intenso y activo en Colombia en la defensa de los derechos humanos, concretamente en una región del país que se llama San José de Apartadó. Ford fue una de las organizaciones en Colombia más perseguida, quizás, por organismos de inteligencia. Esta es la lista, una de las listas, porque tenemos conocimiento que hay varias con otros nombres de ciudadanos extranjeros. Se ordenaba en esta lista seguimientos y sobre todo tener copias de los pasaportes.
Also another team that lives in the peace community of San José de Apartadó. And they went for a few days to Medellin, and when they came back to Bogotá, they found that their apartment and office had been broken into, and that the computers that we had been stolen. And it was basically, but most interestingly, we also found that the passports we had at the time, our team was comprised exclusively by U.S. citizens. We have some Europeans as well. That their passports, the U.S. passports, and also their credit cards were laid on their beds. We saw that as a message that whoever broke into our office was not behind the value. It was not it was not a theft, but they were after the information that we had.
Otras ciudadanas norteamericanas con trabajo en Colombia: Jimena Sánchez Garzoli, de WOLA, y Heather Hanson, de US Office en Colombia. En junio del 2007 reportaron y denunciaron a la Embajada Americana seguimientos ilegales y el intento de robo a su habitación del hotel. Ellas intuyen, creen y denunciaron que lo que iba a pasar esa noche de los sucesos, de los hechos, iba a ser mucho más grave. El obispo de Detroit, Thomas Gumleton, aparece también en otra lista mencionada en el DAS con órdenes de seguimiento. Este obispo, al hacer una misión en territorio colombiano, en la región de Urabá, fue detenido por unos minutos por militares quienes lo insultaron constantemente. El nombre de él, reitero, aparece también en las listas del DAS. Y en agosto del año pasado, el 21 de agosto más concretamente, el Washington Post, en primera página, nos plantea el siguiente interrogante, o nos dice mejor, no un interrogante, nos afirma. El Washington Post, el 21 de agosto del año pasado, dice que la ayuda estadounidense resultó implicada en abusos de poder en Colombia. Dice el diario que equipos y entrenamientos suministrados a unidades élites de la inteligencia colombiana terminaron usados para llevar a cabo operaciones de espionaje ilegales y hacer campañas de desprestigio, entre otros, contra la Corte. El Departamento de Estado, vale la pena resaltar esto, y quiero resaltar esto, el Departamento de Estado, a través de Victoria Nuland, afirmó que no tiene conocimiento si los equipos que entregó al gobierno colombiano fueron usados para realizar las interceptaciones. El embajador de la época en Colombia, el señor Ronfield, preguntó a sus miembros de la embajada quiénes conocían de esto y todos dijeron que hasta ese momento no conocían de este tipo de operaciones. En abril del 2010, el embajador norteamericano anunció que suspendería la asistencia al DAS y esta ayuda se entregaría a la Policía Nacional. En abril del 2010, 7 meses después de conocido el escándalo. Vale la pena recordar que Colombia es el más alto destinatario en América Latina de asistencia militar y económica por parte del gobierno de los Estados Unidos. Después del artículo, el congresista McGovern y la congresista Tchaikovsky enviaron una carta a los diferentes departamentos que tienen que ver con la ayuda militar y técnica en los Estados Unidos. El congresista McGovern nos ha dicho en la mañana de hoy que la respuesta no es satisfactoria para ellos.